Welcome to People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose is a podcast of inspiring people whose stories help you see things differently, live with intentionality, elevate the way you participate in the world, and take the necessary leaps in your life to seek and find your passions. Come with us and develop the courage to wholeheartedly pursue your purpose and unleash your truest potential. Hello and welcome to People of Purpose. I'm your host, Tanner Badgley, and I have here two co-authors, Adrian Brambila and Dr. Klontz, the authors of Start Thinking Rich. And it's an honor to have both of you gentlemen here today. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having us. Stoked to be here.
I'm really excited about this concept because I feel that I'm like that background that you talk about in the book, coming in from like kind of poverty mentality. I had the broken home, single mom, living on like I had like free student lunch. Everything needed to come from scholarship or grants to do programs, and get into college and so forth. And now I'm living like full entrepreneur lifestyle, like been generating my own income for 6 straight years now without an employer. Before that, I was like living in Thailand, making money in like really aligned ways. And I think there's a lot here to unpack with you guys. And it's like such an honor to be sitting with like people that are deep in the psychology of success and of money. I'm excited to unpack some of that stuff with you guys today.
Awesome. Super cool. And congrats for your own journey. I know I've had a chance to listen to a couple podcasts, and you do have amazing guests, but you're also really amazing in what you've done. And you're an example, and we hope to be examples too for the people, especially that also did not grow up with money, which is all of us on this call, that it's still possible. It's still possible for you to change your circumstance through creative and hard work and the way you think. Yeah,
absolutely. I want to know how you guys got connected with each other. What did you guys find that was like so purposeful and intentional about you two starting to do work together?
Well, I think I'll speak honestly. Brad and I should not be co-authors on the same book. And by the way, Brad, it's actually Dr. Brad Klontz. He's a leading psychologist of wealth. You can find him always at Barnes & Noble. And if you read any books on money, and anytime a book talks about something called a money script, which is your inherited belief of how you think money works, basically from your parents, Dr. Brad basically pioneered that concept. So it's quoting his work. And so for me, I was a guy that was living in a van making content about minimalism and why wealth is actually not about objects, it's about owning your time. And we just connected actually through TikTok and just started collaborating and honestly making fun of each other. Brad would make TikTok saying, "Oh, I'm Adrian, I live in a van, look at me." And then I would make fun of Brad saying, "Oh, I'm super educated and I made this study." And we actually formed a friendship. But underlying, like our content is very lighthearted and humorous. But the thing we share in common is that we want to help, we want to make an impact. And we've known each other for years now, and TikTok is how we met. And that's one of the amazing things. I'm sure like you've made a lot of connections. When you hit publish on any social media platform, you never know who's going to see it. You never know the relationships you're going to form and bond. And I'm really honored to have been able to make a book with Brad.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool to hear that authentic relationships that go somewhere really special can come from a place as simple as TikTok.
Yeah, and I think the content, Adrian's content really resonated with me, and it was I'm not sure if he was doing it on purpose or what, but he's doing lots of entrepreneurial content, living in a van, doing the minimalism thing. But he also was very clear that he was trying to promote a certain mindset around money, and very clear. He and I sort of resonated on the anti-get rich quick content that was out there. And as a matter of fact, we would say sort of the opposite. Like, I love this about Adrian too. He's an expert at making money online and teaching people how to make money online, and he promotes it with, "I'm going to teach you how to make your first dollar online." And that is very different than, and by the way, he works really hard to fulfill that promise. And it's very different than "I'm going to teach you how to get in this Lamborghini," And so I think we were both sort of combating what I saw as very destructive lessons for young people that were setting them up for failure. And I came from a lower income environment, broken home, going without. And I fell prey to a lot of those scams as I was growing up because I didn't know how rich people got rich. I didn't know how people invested. I felt like I was starting from scratch. And so when I saw that on TikTok, I essentially became a creator because I was so mad and furious. And I wanted to sort of drown out the voices that were, selling misinformation. And the big challenge for me is I am Dr. Brad and I'm a professor. All that stuff was working against me on TikTok. It's like nobody cares. It's like I'm competing with young people who are attractive and are selling get rich quick courses, and credentials meant nothing. It's like, how engaging can you make the content, and how can you? So for me, it was a long study on how do I take what I know to be true about improving people's lives, and how do I put it in a form to get the attention of people on social media, which is a whole nother journey of compromise. So a lot of my videos will start with, you'll be poor forever if you have these mindsets. And it's not normally how I go around talking to people, but it's how I have to get attention. And a lot of the chapters in our book, we came up with like, what are the mindsets we want to teach that are really important for becoming wealthy? And then we workshopped it on social media and all that to try to figure out, well, how do we title these so that we can get people to pay attention to the message?
Yeah, and so you felt people would pay attention to the message about like, you're going to stay poor if you believe these things.
Yep. Yeah, because I tried it the other way. It's like, if you harness the power of compound interest, you can become wealthy. People like flip, they're just, we're in an attention economy. And for me, it's almost like I had to become multiculturally competent. It's like, this is the culture of this platform. And so how do I create content to kind of get in there? And for me, I felt like there was so much purpose in this for me, because I'm like, I grew up not knowing. I tried to become the mentor that I wish I had. And so, my purpose for this book is to be the book I wish I'd read. I wish I'd had
I
it.
love
It would have
that.
saved me, a decade of mistakes because I didn't know how people did it.
I love that. And Adrian, you have a different background, right? What were you? So you were that guy that was able to capture attention and be young on TikTok and seemed to capture Dr. Brad's attention. And you had this awesome lifestyle too that I feel like Gen Z people would like be eating up, like the whole like minimalism van lifestyle. What was going on in your life at the time that you think, brought this book to life?
Before living in a van, I've been creating content since 2010. My first content was actually, I used to be a pro hip hop dancer. I danced for T-Pain. My first channel, which was my first attempt at trying to make money online, was dancing.
Really?
So I would create tutorials on how to do the robot. I know people can't watch me, but I'm doing like an arm wave. So I would do stuff, try to teach people how to move and do cool dance moves. And I didn't make any money, by the way, for the first 2.5 years, and I finally made 45 cents. So it was a very long road to making it happen. But I think I've been creating content. Now it's a habit. I feel weird if I don't create, but my interests change. I'm 35 now. I'm not a pro dancer anymore. In fact, I have like back pain. So, like I'm regular, just human. And then when my wife and I moved to Ireland, that's when we like got rid of our stuff and we had to get liberated from consumption. We had like let go of our home and our cars and stuff. When I say let go, I mean it was a choice, but I felt like I was in the Matrix back then, where like stuff, my identity was part of the stuff I owned. I don't feel like that anymore. And so actually when we lived in the van, we were already nomads for a couple of years. And so the van was actually more stuff than what I was used to. But all this entire time, from my first posted video in 2010 to living in the van, which was in 2020, those 10 years, I experimented. I tried a lot of different ways to make money online. And it was an accident how I went from like 100,000 followers on TikTok to like 1 million. Because I was documenting, just creating content like I normally was. And I was talking about like, oh, I make money from my blogs and affiliate marketing and brand deals and stuff. And yeah, I made like $100,000 last month and I live in this van. And then people would be like, wait a second, you live in a van and you made that? This is BS. This guy's an imposter. This guy's a fake. This guy's a fraud. And then those videos of me just sharing my life ended up going viral. I was getting like 20 to 30 million views every single week, just like on default, because I was a visual contradiction of like what wealth and high income means. If I looked to most people, they'd say, this guy lives in a van. This guy must be poor. So obviously this is fake. But that's when my content started to change. Like, whoa, people have a really twisted perception of what wealth is. They think I need to have flash and Rolex and designer and fly private and live in a mansion. And I'm trying to say, hey, like, no, I actually own my time. I don't own anything, and I'm rich on paper. Like, and in fact, I'd be really transparent. Like, look, here's my dashboard of how much money I made. Like, and so I was being really transparent, and despite being that transparent, it just people have these like blocks of tunnel vision of what wealth needs to look like. So that's when my content started to change. It's like, no, I think I have a new purpose, and it's I need to share with people that wealth is not about objects. It's about time and freedom of choice. So I was living it to an extreme in that van, and if anything, I was bragging about like, hey, because I don't have anything, I actually invested 95% of every dollar I made that year, and that's going to compound and make so much more money than normal people who are saving, like trying to save 15% because they have all this stuff. So it was cool to be part of. For those that may have heard this FIRE movement, in case you've never heard of that, financial independence, retire early. So it's these radical people who are like trying to save like as much money and invest so they can retire early. But yeah, so my content is now we have this book coming out, which is like full of amazing stories of people like Brad and I and people like you who have come from nothing and changed their circumstance through a way of thinking.
Yeah. What did it take from you to break through to where you're making $100,000 a month and you're in control of your time? Like, what beliefs did you reprogram to get that way?
I think a belief I inherited to my parents. My dad was an immigrant from Mexico. Came when he was 13. My grandma is the one that brought us here. So Mexican culture. My mom's also Mexican. And one belief I established for them, which sounds good, but actually is bad as you start to earn more income, was I need to sacrifice and work hard in order to make money. At first hand, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. You need to work hard, you need to sacrifice. But when you start making money online, I remember like when I made my first $1,000, this is 3 years into entrepreneurship, I've created a 60-minute dance tutorial. And when I launched it to my 15,000 subscribers at the time, I made $1,000 that month. And it was life-changing because I was making minimum wage at a call center.
Wow.
And I did not work hard and I did not sacrifice. In fact, I had fun doing it. And so I had to change my belief set that like, that's like, I think part of the equation. You do need to work hard. Every successful person I know needs to sacrifice, but there's a scarcity mindset around money. Where having an abundance mindset, which I did not have, like, in fact, I felt guilty and I think it held me back, was to realize like, actually, when I put value into the world, the more value I put, the more money I make. And that has nothing to do with working hard or sacrifice. It has to do with giving. So when I made better dance tutorials, and really what I realized, I wasn't teaching dance, I was helping little young boys with self-confidence. So they could go in the circle at proms. So people could go and dance in the wedding and not feel like a fool. I was actually teaching that, and that's when I was like, that's the value I'm giving. I'm giving self-confidence just comes through the outlet of dance, and the more value I teach, then the more money I make, and eventually that side hustle did make enough to quit my 9-to-5, and then that started my entrepreneur journey in 2015 full time. But so yeah, it's funny sometimes the things like that you need. Oh, there's a famous quote. I'm going to botch it, but what you did to get here is not what you need to do to go there. I think it's something like that, right? That's what I had to switch.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, what got you here won't get you there. I think maybe what it is. I've heard that before.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
For sure. How about you, Dr. Brad? Like, what's your journey from poverty to, or I guess, wrong belief system into like shifting into the right belief system? Like, when did it start clicking in place for you?
So it was probably in high school. Like I had a really rough upbringing, and there was lots of trauma and drama, and I just really wasn't very focused in school at all. So I'm ashamed to say that I like cheated my way through most of my high school career. And to be honest, I just didn't see any purpose in it. I'm like, why am I learning this stuff? This is BS, you know? And then I ended up getting to college on a tennis scholarship, which is the only reason I went to college. I was like, oh, pay me to, well, luckily I had terrible jobs that were like backbreaking, painting houses and doing construction and doing road commission work and all this stuff. And So I quickly learned the game that what I noticed is that people who went to college sweat a lot less.
Yeah.
And then after my first year in college, I'm like, damn, I get to sleep in till 10. And then I just sort of realized the game. I'm like, wait, the game back then too, and it's still true today, is the more education I get, the more money I make for working less. And so the big mindset for me was, this is a game. Holy crap, this is a game. It's like, well, what's the purpose of learning this and that? Well, it's to win the game. And so for me, the game was like, how can I have some money? How can I give my kids a better life? How can I put my kids in a school that they're going to get a better education? I mean, I was very much focused on sort of the family and taking my grandfather's sacrifice, my mom's sacrifice to like, so this is a bit of a gift for me. And here I am, and it's my job to take the family to the next level. And I did look at it like a game. I was stuck for a long time in this, I call it in my research, money avoidance, where it's like rich people are greedy, money corrupts, there's virtue. You're actually a better person if you don't care about money. Like, these are beliefs I had. And I realized it was because we were poor, and that helps you feel better about being poor.
Yeah.
And because, and certainly you can find terrible rich people. Like, we could probably name them all right now on your podcast if you want. But there's also wealthy people who do great things in the world. And I was like learning this. I'm like, oh, wow. Like, wealthy people like cured polio, and they made all these libraries. And there's all this stuff you can do with money that's good. And even sort of religiously, I was like, wait a second. So if you just give all the money to the evil people, like, how does that help in anything? Don't we want the good people to have the money? And so I started to have some of those shifts, and then just really realizing that money's a game. And the statistic that really got me was learning that like 70 or 80% of millionaires are self-made.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, if they can do it, I can do it. And that was the big shift for me.
Yeah. And when did you get your breakthrough? Like, when did you start getting, income and checks and stuff that was way beyond what you needed to live off of? Like, what was it that you found?
Well, I went and I looked at college like a business decision, and I'm like, all right, so I wanted to be a therapist. I had a brother who took his own life, and I was like messed up by that. And I was also like, how do I help other people not do that? So I decided I wanted to be a therapist. And then I approached it like a business decision. I'm like, all right, well, if I'm going to go be a therapist, how do I make the most money being a therapist? And so I went to something called the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which, by the way, is free online right now, Department of Labor. And I looked at, if I'm going to do the same work, what pays me the most? And I saw clinical psychology. So I was like, all right, so the game for me is clinical psychology. And by the way, I got rejected from grad school the first time by 10 or 12 grad schools. Wow. I just didn't know enough to know what I needed to have on my resume. And so I figured that game out. And so then I got that on my resume. And so a year or two later, I got into a doctor program. To me, it's all a game. It's all a big game. So decide what you want and then decide how to play the game. And so when I got out of school, I owed $100,000 in student loan debt because I had to get scholarships. I had to get loans. I would have never gotten through school. When people talk about like not allowing student loans anymore, I'm mortified. I'm like, I would have never been able to get through school without those. Let's come up with another strategy, but don't do that. If you're going to make it free, but don't take away the loans from the poor people. How else are we going to get the degree? But I saw a friend of mine make $100,000 in 1 year trading stocks. And this is where I fell prey to a get rich quick scheme. I sold everything I had of value. I bought a $500 car. I had like one fork and one plate. I had no furniture, and I started to trade with it. I thought, this is how people get rich. 3 months into it, the tech bubble burst. I lost all my money. And I'm like, and so this is when I looked at my psychology. I was like, why would a reasonably intelligent person do something so stupid with his money? And that's when I started to dig into my psychology, interviewing my parents, my grandparents. And since then, I've now done research on over 100,000 people. And what we've discovered is these beliefs that you have around money are determining your outcomes you're getting right now. One of the chapters in our book is, your beliefs about money are keeping you poor. And it's a huge mindset shift. It's like, whoa, because what I want to do is blame everyone else. I want to blame society. I want to blame the fact that it's unfair to grow up poor when other people are growing up rich. But really, it's your beliefs. And when I was aware of that, I was like, okay, well, what are my beliefs? So I interviewed my parents. What was it like for you growing up around money? What was it like for my grandparents? I found all these stories of like, oh my gosh, no wonder I did what I did. And this is a huge part of our book. And the message is, don't be ashamed of your financial mess. Like, you got here honestly. You're following scripts from your family, from your parents. Maybe your parents didn't know enough to teach you. The culture is teaching you the wrong thing. So you got here honestly. So don't worry about the shame. But the bottom line is if you want different results in your life, you're going to have to look at your beliefs and you're going to have to change them.
Yeah. And then how do you even get people to be on board with the concept of like they want to make money in their life? Does that have to just come from within, or is that a belief that you've seen that people can shift?
Well, for me, like chapter 1 of our book is Being Poor Sucks. And the only people trying to tell you that, oh, money doesn't mean anything, I don't know who they are. I mean, they're certainly not people who grew up poor, because if you grew up poor, being poor sucks. And so essentially, I think everybody wants to have a better life. Everybody wants to feel like they're getting paid what their effort and what their value is. Everyone wants to put their kids in a good school. Everybody wants access to these things. So, and we don't believe in like the fact that if you make money, someone else loses money. Like literally, we live in a game where people in Washington or wherever the hell they are just printing money out. They're just cranking the money out. Like, it's like that is literally the economic system we're in right now. So we do not believe that you have to take money from people to better yourself and to improve your financial situation. We believe that there's absolutely enough to go around. And that's one of the comments I get every now and then that just boggles my mind. It's like, well, if everybody did this, I'm like, well, yes, I hope everybody who read this post does this. Like, I'm not worried about that. Yeah. I truly believe it's available for everyone. And it's actually so incredibly simple. And so we're just trying to get to people as early as possible. The first part is believing that they can do it. Like, I think that's probably the biggest shift people need to make. It's like, wait, if they can do it, so can I. So if you're listening to this, you can do it.
Yeah. And I appreciate you guys' commitment to the podcast circuit. Adrian was telling me all about you guys are traveling all over the country doing these shows, like, and you're doing as much in person as possible. You guys are living ambassadors for the whole, I'm a regular person that did it, and you can believe that you can do it too. I think that's admirable.
Yeah, we do. I think there is an assumption for people that read the book, and we could say, like, if you don't agree with this, I don't think the book is for you or content is for you, is we assume that everyone wants to have financial freedom. This is operating on a day-to-day basis without the constraints of money. So without having money, if you had money abundance and financial freedom, you could choose what you do and how you spend your day and how long you spend doing the things you'd like to do. It's up to you, totally up to you. And if you don't like it and you're doing the same thing, then you have the ability to change. And you only get that if you have financial freedom, because we live in a world that operates around money. You have to pay certain things, you have to pay bills. And so if you don't have to worry about that because you have invested and that money's paying for your lifestyle, and now you get to choose whatever you'd like and travel or stay at home, doesn't matter. I can't judge you. You have financial freedom. That's the assumption. If you want that, this book is going to help you. That's why we've created over 10,000 pieces of content combined, all about financial freedom. So that's the assumption, is that people, if you guys want financial freedom, that's why we're doing this. And I haven't met anyone who's like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to go to work. I want to work for a boss in a corporation who doesn't care about me at all. Like, that's what I want, So
what do you guys see as like a roadmap for people? Like, how do they shift their belief? Do you need to hit some sort of rock bottom where you say, no more, this is enough? Or can they take from themselves where they're at and just start elevating with something consistent, daily habits? What's your guys' belief about how you transform beliefs?
I think this is a really tough question, actually, because some people have heard the right tactics and advice already, and maybe dozens and dozens of times, but they haven't implemented. And it's typically the belief that happens. And so, like, some people need, like, a lot of pain hitting that rock bottom. And that's what we call learning the hard way. Some people also need, like, without the pain, I didn't get here through pain. I'm not one of those people. I went through here from desire. Like desire. And also I think pressure. I think pressure is like another great motivator. The pressure that I instilled on myself, my parents have never done this or asked this to me, but my parents and the sacrifice my parents made, my dad specifically, he grew up in like third world Mexico. Like, he struggled to eat. Like, he had to go steal food and share stories with me. I talk about this in the book. One specific one where one day he had to go out into a field and dig out an onion, and he bought the onion. And when he was telling me the story, it wasn't like in a sad tone. It was like, it's the best thing I ever had. And I was thinking to myself after, I was like, I have never just gone to like my cabinet and just pulled out an onion and just went like, that sounds nasty. But when you're starving, it was probably amazing. So like these struggles that I learned from both my parents, like created a pressure. It's like, wow, the amount of sacrifice that they did and like immigrated here, like I cannot be a screw up. So that pressure, like I have to do well. So pressure and desire to do well. But some people do need pain, and I wish people didn't, but sometimes you do need to hit rock bottom in order to be like, wow, I need to finally turn my life around and like finally understand this money thing. But I think the other thing, and Brad actually has a really amazing study on this, about vision and kind of in line with desire. But Brad has a really famous study on how he's actually helped people like increase their savings by an insane amount just by this practice. What is that? What is that one, Brad?
Yeah, and it really does go along the line of the positive. And I want to remind me to talk about learned helplessness, because that's probably keeps more people down than anything. But the importance of a vision of your future is so critically important, because we're wired to consume right now. So everything in your brain right now is saying eat more, sugar, fat, consume. And you have to override that to not become obese. Like your default wiring right now is to just become obese, because this is the way your brain works. Move as little as possible, eat as much as possible. And the reason we're here today is because our ancestors had that mindset. Like there's no like cave people back there weren't out there like, oh, here, let me go lift this rock up and down for no reason at all. It's like that's not how you survive in scarcity. So you have to have a really exciting vision to overcome this desire to consume and spend money right now. And so in a study we did, we had people literally like close their eyes and visualize their goals. Like what matters most to you, and talk about purpose. Man, this was financial freedom. This was like safety and security. This was spending more time with the people I love. That's what a lot of these things that matter most to us are about, pursuing an interest, helping the world be a better place. These are a lot of what people's financial goals are. We had them create pictures of these. So like literally like pencils, paper, crayons, cut out pictures. And we had them name accounts that are focused on these goals. And then we encouraged them to automate like movement from their checking account every month to these goals. And we spent 1 hour with them doing this, and we saw a 73% increase in savings because people got so excited about these goals. All of a sudden, it was easy for them to cut out this over here or reallocate money over there, because what really mattered to them was this, not this other stuff. Like the problem in the US here is there's an unending amount of stuff to spend your money on, that with the promise that it's going to make you happy and, you're going to become more attractive to whoever it is you want to be attractive to. I mean, it's like we were just inundated with all this stuff to spend. And so to overcome that, you really have to have this mindset about a vision of what really matters. And I think what's most important is starting as early as possible. But one of the things that keeps people stuck is this concept of learned helplessness. And this is a series of terrible studies they did on dogs. And I just want you to think about whether you are the dog in this scenario. Because if you are, this is what we need to have you snap out of. So essentially what they did is they put dogs in cages and they electrified the bottom of the cage. Now, what do you think the dog did? It jumped up and down. It's doing anything in its power to escape. Eventually, it realized escape was impossible. So it did what is the most beneficial to survival, frankly. It just laid down and just whimpered and took it, because expending more energy isn't going to help you in that scenario. So terrible. You basically taught the dog to just lay down and take it. Now, what's fascinating is the next study. And by the way, these are terrible. We don't endorse these studies at all. The next study, they took a new set of dogs who hadn't been traumatized by that. They put them in a cage. They electrified half of it, but there was a little barrier. If they hopped over the barrier, no shock. The dogs would jump around and howl, and they jump over the barrier. Boom, safe. No more pain. They took the dogs from that first experiment, though. They put them in the cage. They just laid down and whimpered. So quite literally, all they had to do was hop over here, and they'd be safe. They didn't even try. And this is the part that I'd say that a lot of our book is around this concept. We want people to recognize they have the power to change. And the challenge is many people grew up having the experience of having no power, which is, by the way, everybody. As a child, you can't change anything. You can't do anything about anything. And the problem with that is you could be that dog where you realize, you think, oh, well, I can't do anything, so I just have to survive. So If I get money, I'm going to spend it. If I get a credit card, I'm going to run it up. I mean, it's impossible for me. I can never have success. And meanwhile, we're looking at him going, dude, all you got to do is jump over here. It's right here. Here's the success. It's real simple. Just save and invest a percentage of every dollar you make. It's right here. But they're stuck in this mindset of helplessness. And I'd say that I am most passionate we love teaching people about side hustles. We're teaching them how to invest in this book and everything. But what we really want to do is tackle that. I can't do it. And the problem is there's a bunch of people in our society who make tons of money by keeping you disempowered. There are politicians. There are, to some degree, corporations. I mean, they don't want you to have financial freedom. They want you to want them and need them and be dependent on them. And so we're really trying to push back against that message that I think is so damaging to so many people.
Yeah, one thing that I've experienced was kind of isolating or lonely when you choose entrepreneurship is you're seen as this like oddball now that's like, you know, going subversive to the culture and people are concerned for you. And there's a sense of like deep personal like identity and self-esteem that I found that I needed to carry with me in order to maintain the focus. And if you don't have that, it's easy to get sucked up in all the stories of others. What do you guys have to say about that?
Yeah, I think that especially in the Western societies, like we assimilate our identity into our work. And so this is actually another chapter in our book is called Retirement is for Dead People. And we make that claim because like a lot of people have, I mean, there's really sad data that when people like retire from a 9-to-5 job what they've done for 40 years, they lose their identity. And then what happens when they lose purpose and identity, they pass, even though they're completely healthy. And so like your identity, like as an entrepreneur, now you're revolting against the norm. The normal identity is like, I work. So like often it's kind of sad actually. It's like, hey, tell me about yourself, Tanner. It's like, oh, I'm an accountant or I'm a marketer. And it's like, you're associating your work as like your primary identity. And that can be, I don't think that's always a good thing. I think there's a difference between being prideful and proud that you do really great work, but wrapping your entire identity into work is, I think it can be bad. And we see a lot of examples of that in Japan. They have a retirement husband syndrome and this is a whole type of movement that was created because of like an epidemic of retired Japanese husbands and a high suicide rate associated with them. So it's like because their identity was so wrapped, so they the government basically created programs to help because they realized that it actually is a problem. So identity and work, it's tough, especially like we're not immune to recognizing different status with what we do, and then in the entrepreneur route, there's whole different status games. I find myself in rooms with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs are a lot more transparent than I would say 9-to-5 workers on like income. And so you can get caught up like, okay, congratulations, you revolted and great. You found your room of entrepreneurs. Doesn't mean like, okay, all the status games are gone. You might walk into a room and then you learn that someone is doing 10 times the numbers that you are. And you're like, oh my gosh, like what's my worth as an entrepreneur against this person? So there's always going to be like that. That's why I think comparison is the enemy of success. And why you have to really value yourself and also just be careful how much of your identity is wrapped around, you know, certain things. So you don't want to have it all wrapped and then you change and then you know,
there's also
so
that
bad.
like sense of like moving the goalposts further and further. Like you set apart, you know, you set out and say, when I have this, I will feel this. And then it moves again. How do we center our kind of purpose around something different than like some sort of financial metric? Like, yeah, what do you guys have to say about that?
I think this is the problem with how retirement is marketed. It's marketed as a destination, and that I think that's the issue. Same with entrepreneur. When you set a goal, I want to make 10K a month, I want to have 1 million invested. The destination actually is not important. What's important is the journey. You have to enjoy the journey where at whatever level you're at. And if you idolize a destination when you get there, the moment is fleeting. No matter how big your number is or whatever your goal is, then that moment passes. So that's why people keep moving the goalposts is they feel like almost an unsatisfaction now that they finally did it, now that they made the climb. Even there's even astronauts who land on the moon and then they come back to life, they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Because they idolize that destination so much. So you just have to enjoy the journey. And that might sound like terrible advice, especially if you're on the grind right now and you're barely scraping it by, living paycheck to paycheck. But I have been there. And the only way I can say I have proof that I was happy when I was broke and going minimum wage is as I journaled. And this is the exercise that I think is something I'd highly recommend. I can go back to my journals back in 2010 when I started creating content. I was making minimum wage and working side hustles and I was even a go-go dancer at an 80s club because it paid $25 an hour, which was more than my main job. And I was just grinding, struggling. But I actually enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the journey. And I read that through the tone of voice and when I'm writing because I'm optimistic about the future. And so my first goal or destination I was really trying to be a millionaire before 30. At 28, I have journal entries of me, I think, being like $500,000 shy and be like, I'm not going to do it. Like, I don't think I'm going to do it. And I remember being sad. And then when I was 29, I had an exponential growth year and I ended up hitting it. And like when I did hit it, it was very fleeting. And even though I idolized it for like 10 years, it was fleeting. But I did enjoy the journey throughout. And then I still feel like I enjoy the journey today. This is why we keep creating. You know, this book actually doesn't, there's not really any money in the book. We're doing it because we have financial freedom, and how we choose to spend that freedom is to try to make an impact. And this is why we create the book. So that's ultimately is just enjoying the game of life and you keep trying.
Yeah. What's different for you now on the journey that you don't need the financial freedom destination, that you're already living from that abundance? How does that shift like how you do your days?
I think of like today, for example, like where I spent 3 hours doing movement-based stuff. I spent 2 hours playing pickleball, 1 hour doing MMA, and then the rest of the time I basically I would say this is not a normal day. Like our book launches really soon, so I'm putting all my energy and effort into trying to get this book into as many people as we can. And although it's not sustainable, to me, I am happy when I put my head on my pillow to know that I'm like in this like ebb and flow state. I don't really believe in balance. I believe in times where like you're going for it and times where you're like relaxing. But ultimately, everything, my entire day was by my choosing. It was my choice. I really am passionate about this project of this book, and I'm going all out with it. And it feels great to like have 100% belief in what you're doing. And this is why sometimes 9-to-5 jobs, you don't get that because you don't really get all this freedom of choice. So to me, financial freedom is having that choice of how you want to spend your time, what you want to work on. It doesn't look like giving up or not doing nothing or idleness, which I think is marketed as retirement, is like sitting on a beach somewhere and just like drinking Mai Tais. I think anyone I know that, especially an entrepreneur route, we're always going to be creating, working on something. And to me, like I know I'm always going to be creating. I actually may not always create content on finance or business. I mean, 10 years ago, I was teaching people how to do a body wave. And now I'm talking about finance. I don't know what 10 years is now. I just know that I'm always going to be creating because I feel like it's a great outlet. And yeah, I'm so grateful that I did invest, that I am good with money, so I have that freedom.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful answer. And Dr. Brad, how about you? Like, why are you committing so much of your energy to this book launch when you don't need, it doesn't sound like you need more money. Like, what's the focus for you about?
Well, I mean, so I have a purpose in life, and you may talk about this, but I'd encourage people to actually write it down. Like, so I have a stated purpose. And my purpose is to help bring love, joy, and abundance to the world. So quite literally, everything I do, I funnel through that sense of purpose, because it just makes me feel really good. And is it, I don't know, maybe it's selfish too. Like, I have this selfish sense of joy when I see somebody inspired by something I've done or posted or said, or when I get a message from someone saying, "Oh, I saw your content," and I just want you to know I got out of college and I'm maxing out my 401k, and I'm not sure I would have done it if I hadn't seen your content. Like that's worth 1,000 troll comments. By the way, I get way more troll comments than I get those. But that's worth it all. Like, I mean, the fact that I've had an impact on somebody's life in a positive way, the fact that I'm giving joy and hope and healing to people, I'm in it for that. I'm in it for that is everywhere I can do it, as much as I can do it. And for me, you asked earlier, like, what does wealth mean with regard to purpose and all of that? And one of our chapters is, poor people buy stuff and rich people own time. And so that's one of the shifts we're trying to make in people's lives. Certainly if you're financially free and you don't have to trade your time for like a watch that you want for some reason, whatever, I'm not here to judge the silly little trinkets you think you need to buy to make you happy. Was that a little judgmental? It's not going to make you happy in the long run. It's like, think back to your birthday where you got that thing you wanted and you knew this was the thing, and then what happened to it, right? Of course, you don't even remember what it was. And that this is the hedonic treadmill we have as human beings. And I think it's okay, though. It's like, we're never satisfied. We're never satisfied. And just understand this is how we're wired, right? So that's why when Adrian says, find satisfaction in your day-to-day movement in the process, because that's really the key. There probably was a tribe, thousands of years ago that was absolutely content and satisfied. And do you know what happened to them? They all died because they starved to death because they weren't taking care of the future. They weren't worried about building up their defenses. They weren't thinking about planting crops for the next year. I mean, this whole mindset of the hedonic treadmill, it's part of our curse and part of our blessing. And I think what Adrian and I are promoting is being purposeful about it. So it's like, you have this, it's good for you to have a purpose and have a drive. Don't think it's going to solve all your problems. Don't think that there's a destination that's going to magically give you everything you want. As a matter of fact, we've seen people destroy everything that matters to them to try to pursue wealth, their health, their kids, their family, their marriages. Like, we are not here to say that's worth it. Are you kidding me? What a terrible idea. What a terrible way to go through life. But we do believe that if you do it mindfully, that you can own more of your time and you can spend that making the world a better place, or whatever your purpose is. If your purpose is, helping animals, whatever it is, whatever fills you with joy, gives you a sense of purpose. We don't ever want you to lose that. We don't want you to think that having a certain amount of money in the bank is going to magically make, that sense of purpose no longer relevant to you.
Yeah, I love that. Have either of you guys ever tried going the whole, what do they call it, ascetic route, where you get rid of things? And I guess Adrian in some way did. Did you guys ever try to be like a monk, or just like a yogi, or just someone that lives by the goodwill of the world and doesn't spend a dollar? Have you guys ever gone to an extreme like that?
I feel like I grew up like that. And so it's like, and the interesting thing about growing up like that is I literally could have nothing tomorrow and I would be totally fine. Because I already know that I can be fine having nothing. Part of that sucks. It's like every night I'm sort of thankful for our ancestors who decided to put a toilet indoors, especially living here in Colorado. It's like, my dad grew up with an outdoor toilet in Ohio and he had to take baths outside. It's like, are you kidding me? I am more astounded with the blessings that we have right now. I'm a student of history. We live in the most abundant time and place in all of history. The average middle-class person here is richer than 99% of all the people on Earth. And so for me, I keep that in perspective. We have healthcare, we have all this stuff. It's an unbelievable time of prosperity that we have here in the United States. And so I have that constant appreciation. And so if I had to ride the bus, who cares? I've had to ride the bus before. I mean, it's like, we can manage that. That's not the kind of stuff that really makes you happy.
Yeah.
I think van life is as close I'll get to the minimalist lifestyle. I think doing the monk or living off the abundance of other people. Right when you share this, I actually didn't know the proper name of what is the name of this lifestyle.
I would think ascetic.
That you share,
is that
Tanner?
the word, Dr. Brad?
Yes. Yeah.
I think so.
But when I actually was living in the van in Utah, I met someone for the first time who was doing this. They had a sign, and actually I was really nervous for it. Was a attractive female that looked like she was 23 years old, blonde hair, and she had this sign that said living off love or something like that. And it was at a gas station next to one of the hippie places in Utah. And I remember just feeling scared for her because I don't know why. I've never tried that. So that would be I guess I thought van life was extreme, but that was a whole nother this. She didn't own anything, and she was there literally to her whole day was unplanned, just waiting for someone to come by and bless her. I think maybe that's where I've never tried it, so I can't knock it, but it definitely challenged me.
Yeah.
I think it's a terrible approach to life.
You do?
Personally, I do. And the problem with it is there's a level of an external locus of control there that I'm not really comfortable with, just because I literally don't think that you can trust the universe to take care of you like that without taking care of yourself some.
Yeah.
It's like, and you don't have to look very far to find examples of people taking advantage of people who are in a vulnerable position. And I've spent years and years working with the homeless as a clinical psychologist. And I got to tell you, like, some of them are doing it by choice and some of them have severe mental illness. But the bottom line is the one thing that's a pattern that's very consistent is the level of trauma and the level of vulnerability they have. And it breaks my heart, to be honest. And also it's that external locus of control. We have many chapters in our book that like your political party doesn't give a shit about you. Like it's not your fault if you were born poor, but it's your fault if you die poor. I mean, these are messages of self-empowerment, because one of the worst possible things for the outcomes in your life, psychologically, financially, relationally, with regard to educational achievement, is this idea that what happens to me in my life is I'm going to put it in the hands of everyone else. I'm going to trust my company to take care of me in retirement. I'm going to trust the government to take care of me in retirement. I'm going to trust strangers to feed me and clothe me and take care of me and give me a warm, safe place to stay. And that's just not how our society is designed. Yeah. And that mindset and various degrees of that mindset keep people underperforming, not doing as well in school, and having less income and less access to safety, security, quality of education, etc. So that mindset terrifies me in a sense. Like, that would be the worst possible outcome for my children, to be honest, if they said, Dad, I'm going to wander the earth and just count on everyone else to take care of me. I would be mortified and fearful every night.
What's your guys' perspective on giving wealth away? How do you guys, when you have means and your dollar could help, do you just do that, or do you create things from it, or do you invest it for more dollars, or what's your guys' viewpoint on that?
I think actually that is the best way to spend money. And scientifically, the dopamine that you get from gifting is so much higher when you get than buying for yourself. It's the best way to make money. So we talked a lot about attaining financial freedom. And then once you have financial freedom, this is a point that most people never get to. And you have a very serious question that you can finally have no excuses to really think about. How do you live the best years of your life, and how do you what do you do with your life? Mm-hmm. A lot of people never get to that point because they're burdened by money. Yeah. They never get clarity of mind. So finally it's how do you spend money? And there's examples of evil rich people, of course, but there's also great examples of people who are hey, I don't have to worry about money. Maybe I can help other people and have done amazing things. So I think impact is an incredible thing. I don't share anything online of donations we make, but it's one of the best ways I think you can spend money is giving and gifting and serving the causes that you believe in. And one thing I do believe, though, is whatever you want to help, give back, environment, dogs, people, homeless, you can make a bigger impact if you're financially independent. So it's in your best service to become your best financial self so you can actually make a bigger impact. Money, you've heard this before, money doesn't change you, it just makes you more of who you are. And so I think another thing I don't like hearing from people is well, if I had $1 million, then I would donate to all these causes. And I'm how are you donating now? And if they're not, even if they're not making money, they're probably not going to do it when they make a lot, because a donation is right now you could donate $1 and that would count. Mm-hmm. But if again, idolizing a destination, it's not going to happen. It's just going to exponentially grow where you're at now. So if you're already serving, guess what? You should be more hungry to become rich, because you'll serve better, you'll serve more, you'll make a bigger impact with that money. But fantasizing that you're going to do all these generous things once you're rich, I doubt it.
So what I'm hearing is like pull
Yeah, I
that
would.
forward to today. Start behaving how you want to be in your future today, even before like the scoreboard says that you're rich. Like start behaving as if you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say too, it's like just be honest about it. I mean, it is in your best interest to give. There's all sorts of studies have shown this. Like altruism, it's probably selfish in its very nature because it makes you feel really, really good. And actually, one of the best cures for depression is to go find someone worse off than you and spend time around them and try to make their lives better. That's actually one of the best cures for chronic depression. And again, like Adrian said, maybe it's $1. Maybe it's even more than that. Maybe you have a dollar amount for your time. Donate your time, even if you don't have it in your bank account. And that's something that's been really important to me my entire life. And I'll just be honest, it's probably for selfish reasons because it makes me feel really, really good. And so if you want to feel better, then go ahead and find ways to help other people.
Yeah. And then do you guys get offered all sorts of opportunities? How do you like vet like when it feels aligned to you versus when it's like someone's trying to, I don't know, take something from you, or how do you know when it's the right aligned opportunity to give?
That's a really good. We have not been asked this question. We've done like
Yeah.
70 podcasts. I feel like every day, literally every day, I probably get like 1,000 messages from, we have almost 2 million
Yeah, you guys are
followers.
out
So
there saying I'm
they,
rich, I have money. Like people are probably asking you for your money,
right,
right?
dude, every day there's a GoFundMe. Every day there's a nonprofit. Every day there's a GoFundMe bit. Like
I'm
there's like,
noticing this
hey, do you want
starting
to
in my
invest in
world
my
too. Like,
business?
Yeah.
what's your
Yeah.
compass on
Yeah.
these things? How do you make those decisions?
For me, I feel like online it's very tough. I feel like I need to. I think when it comes to donating, this is all personal preference on like how you spend your money. I do not judge and shame. Like for example, I don't own pets. You obviously have a beautiful pug who we can hear barking in the background, and so you're more there it is in the background. So like, and this is gonna make you sound like a savage, but like when I hear stuff about dog stuff, I'm like, nope, I've never donated $1 to any dog
Yeah.
thing. Like because but I have to people things. And again, don't judge me. If you spending all your money on dog, I know there's a dog epidemic. Like I know, I know about this world. It's not like I'm ignorant to it, but like this is my financial freedom, and you shouldn't judge how I choose to make an impact. Just like I wouldn't judge you. And there's all different.
So
types
you're
of
saying
causes.
it's like
So
causes that are personally resonant with you, like you have some sort of personal connection to the person and maybe the cause as well, and then that causes you to like your heart's stirred and you're like, all right, this is the. And then also, how do you decide the amount? Is it $5 or 5,000? How do you know?
yeah, I don't have a mathematical system. I think because when it comes to donating, it's definitely an emotional decision. So I'll say these two things. It doesn't always have to be a personal connection. For example, I just heard of an incredible cause I did not realize was a thing. I heard of I was at an event I was speaking at, and I talked to someone who their impact thing is period poverty. I did not know this, but third world countries, girls who have periods, they don't have anything to help with that. And so this is what period poverty is. And so they're having to reuse clothing and stuff like that. It's just terrible. And so her cause is basically there's an organization who's sending out these like reusable cups. Again, I'm a guy, so I'm not personally connected to this, but man, I believe in it, and I'm now interested in it and learning more about that currently as we speak. Again, I feel like this is my privilege now in a place of financial freedom where I can make an impact. So the second thing I want to say is like this is why you should want to get to a place of financial freedom. One of our chapters is you don't want to make $1 million, you just want to spend $1 million. And this is the real difference if you have a rich mindset or a poor mindset. If you were to get $1 million right now, and let's say you're a very generous person and you might be like, well, I know what I would do with that $1 million. I would pay off my parents' debt, buy them a house, and then of course I just heard of this I want to donate to dog shelters and run my own thing. And even if it's all generous things, this is actually a poor mindset because you're taking that money and it's just a matter of time. You're just listing things off and you just deduct. Here's the difference. If you want to make a big impact and a bigger impact, there's only one right answer. you take 100% of the money, you invest it. And then as that investment pays you through dividends, you can withdraw, let's say 4% a year and average stock market returns. That's going to grow. You never touch the principal. And then now you have $40,000 a year, which you can do those things. Now, it's not $1 million, but that's going to allow you that every single year you'll be able to consistently donate more and more and more versus just taking the money and then donate. And this is the difference between like trading time and then how wealthy people think. They never trade time for their decisions. So when you hear of billionaires investing hundreds and millions of dollars, they're never taking away from their net worth to do that. It's more of off their gains from their investments. And that's what financial freedom is. And now I'm definitely not even close to being a billionaire, but you don't have to be to already start doing this. But the way of thinking is different. If you want to make a bigger impact, you want to invest and then take from those investments and then spend that money however you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one thing I like about being in real estate is it kind of forces that long-term investment mindset. There's just so many, like the tax structure set for that and like the appreciation and like that's how equity works. Equity kicks off dividends. There's just like so many incentives with that it forces me to keep my money invested. And and also when you're also like a startup entrepreneur too, I want to build a team. I want to be able to have the thing work without my time. And so I don't need to pay myself $1 million a year salary. Like I need to make sure my needs are taken care of and save some money. But like my net worth is getting invested at all times. And it feels like a win to me for my future self is achieving more and more freedom of time and impact and alignment. And I think it's been it's a complete mindset shift from what from what I was taught in high school and college.
And I'll speak for myself too. If somebody asked me to invest in their business, the answer is absolutely not. And that's across the board. So, tell your friends, because I'm getting a lot of DMs. But my particular perspective on that is, nobody invested in my business. Like it's like, and actually, I don't think it's a great idea. Like if you want to start a business, don't take on a bunch of money and then go take on a bunch of debt and what are you going to use that money for? Like there are so many ways to start a business now with $0 invested or very, very small amount invested. And that's the way I think that you should approach your business. Like, I don't want to be part of equipping you. Now you owe me money or now you owe a bunch of people money. Most businesses fail. And that's number one. Number two, I don't want to reinforce people asking me for money like that. By the way, I wouldn't give it to my kids. And trust me, I love my kids more than I love the stranger on the internet asking me for money. But if my kid comes up, hey, can I have some money? The answer is no, you earn the money, And so what I do is I help my kids find ways to earn the money. And so, quite frankly, I help people find ways to earn the money when they're DMing me, because that's what I want to do. That's what I want to teach my kids. And so, because I feel like that's the better message. It's like, a one-time handout for you is going to do nothing. What it's going to do is reinforce you asking for handouts. That's really what it's going to do. And I really sympathize with people who've been in that situation. I've been in that situation. I've gone to bed hungry, and it's $5 probably would have really helped. I could have gone to Taco Bell, but it's like, I think I benefited from the mindset of like, I'm going to have to do this on my own. Like I need to find a way to generate my own $5 each day so that I can have the ability to spend that on food. And so, that is the mindset that I'm trying to instill in the people that I absolutely love the most. And so, for me, it's more about not dealing with what's coming in with requests, because those will just be nonstop. But it's like Adrian said, it's like, well, what is it I want to do? Who is it? Who are the people I want to help? And that has always that's evolved for me and changed over time. But that's always been a huge part of what gives me joy. And again, it's like, I'm not trying to say how great I am. I'm saying it's probably selfish because it makes me feel good. But I think that's a selfishness that is good to embrace.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What are some like quick ideas you have for people to still be like authentic, aligned to purpose, behave as if abundance and their wealth is like coming, and still recognize like I need to earn to eat, like I can't ask for handouts or use debt? Like what do you recommend people step into?
I think it's just understanding, first of all, recognizing that you can have the biggest impact in the world if you are in the best financial health you can possibly be. And so it's kind of how I attach sort of stipulations to my kids' allowance too. It's like, so every dollar that comes into your life is an opportunity. And so it reflects your values. It reflects what matters most to you. And so what do you want to do with that dollar? And maybe it's 10% of it you want to give away. So you have charities that you work with, you have causes that you work with, and that's 10% allocated over there. Please, please do not forget the percentage that you're going to pay yourself for first. So you're going to invest in your financial freedom. Again, this is where the wealth builds, and this is where you're going to be able to give much more than you ever could by just giving it all away every time you get it. And so for me, that's I've always shot for 30% of my income that I'm going to put towards, my financial freedom. And this could be family legacy money too. Like, wouldn't it be great if your kids didn't have to start out broke and they didn't have to go to schools that weren't as good? I mean, wouldn't, a connection to that family and that generational thing. I've always had that connection. Adrian, that's important to him too. I know, just thinking of the family history and everything that my ancestors did to get me here and all the sacrifices and struggles they went through. That's a huge one for me to think about. Like, my grandparents, they didn't have money, but they gave me love and they tried to support me. They were proud of me when I went to college. There was this sense of like, oh, wow, look what Brad's doing, and then the family, it gave them a sense of pride. And I feel a huge sense of responsibility to keep that and pass that along and try to instill that in my own kids. I talk to them all the time about what it's like to be a member of the family and what duties we have to each other and to the world and making the world a better place. So I think it's like attach values to that dollar and put it to work.
Yeah,
every single
I
dollar.
listened to a woman who is like the matriarch of the family, and now the family wealth is like 4 generations deep. And she talked about like this sense of like family culture, and they have like a family newsletter and like a family podcast essentially where they interview the extended members of the family, and there's like a sense of accountability around like, are you stewarding the family's wealth, and like, are you passing this down to your kids?
Wow.
It sounds like that's something that you're focusing on right now with like the next generation. Like, you're going to be handing them a lot of wealth, it sounds like. And so it's like, what are they going to do to continue like passing that forward, like as your ancestors did to you?
Maybe I will. I tell them that maybe they'll get nothing.
Yeah. What's your plan with that? Yeah, that's another question.
Because I don't know. Well, who knows what's going to happen? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to have all these healthcare issues or whatever. And I mean, so I don't tell them they're going to inherit anything because I'm not exactly sure. And also, I've seen many people just wait around for the inheritance,
What's your view on
frankly,
that?
it's not
like
good for
the
them.
trust and the will and like the estate planning. Like how do you think through that process?
Yeah, so it's a double-edged sword, It's like it's sort of like common knowledge, and I'm not sure how statistically accurate it is, but it's pretty common. It's so common that cultures across the world have different names for it. So like in Asia, they have a term rice paddy to rice paddy in 3 generations. And in the US, it's like short sleeve to short sleeve in 3 generations. And the short sleeve is reminiscent of the working class, right? So long sleeve, you're a banker, you're rich. Now you're back to working in the fields, making money. So there's this real common knowledge of somebody makes the money and then the next 2 generations squander it. And I've done studies on this, and there's a syndrome called financial dependence, and it's horrific for you. So it leads to a lack of motivation, a lack of creativity, a lack of passion, a lack of drive, resenting your family or the welfare system, wherever you're getting this financial dependence. So I'm terrified of having my children develop that syndrome. So but I also want them to, I don't want them to have the same scarcity and fear that I had. So that, to be honest with you, this is cutting edge for me because I work with a lot of ultra wealthy, multi-generational families, and I've seen it go really, really bad. And I've seen it go really, really good. And so this is something that I think is a weak spot for me. And by the way, it's going to be a weak spot for you too. And the people who blow it the most are people who grow up poor. And then they're like, I'm going to give my kids all the stuff I never had, without being conscious of what you're creating. Like, what mindset are you creating in your children? It's a huge blind spot for people who are first generation wealth and didn't grow up in it. And so because money is a very powerful reinforcer. And so whatever behavior is happening and then money is given to that, it just reinforces that behavior. And so that's what you have to be really careful about. And so I've connected allowance for my kids directly to work. Like, you're going to do this around the house, you're going to get an allowance. I want extra money. Well, let's do some work to get that money, because I want them to make that connection, not just like, oh, if I ask for money, I'm just going to get it. So I'm really cautious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you view like your spousal relationship around money? Do you feel like there's a sense of you're making the money and she's like managing it, nurturing the family with it, or is there a sense of like she needs to go make it as well? Like, how have you dealt with that?
I think for my wife and I, we were on the same page as money. We weren't always. In fact, this is actually going to sound weird to most people, except if you're in accounting or in the financial space. So my wife worked at Deloitte. She was in audit for 8 years. So huge company.
Yeah.
She had a prestigious job. But when it came to our personal finances, she actually would avoid it. And it was like, because if anyone knows someone or works at a big four accounting firm, they just work you like every ounce of energy that you have. And the last thing you want to do is look at your personal finance. So it was kind of just me doing it. And then she's no longer working at Deloitte. She's actually our CFO for our small companies. And now we've created a system where we review our finances one day every month. And on this day of every month, we go over absolutely everything, every cost, every investment, performance of all of our businesses. And that's all we need to do, because it's all that information is there. I know there's some people who are obsessed with their finances. They're in their spreadsheets every single day looking at numbers and stuff. That's not us, because we're long-term oriented. We just want to make sure, have those checks and make sure like simple as like, hey, do we still need this subscription? Nope, let's cancel. We do it on a monthly basis. And her and I are on the exact same page, and we make decisions together as a team. She is my lifelong partner. She's also my business partner.
Wow.
And so that equity in our decisions has helped us. And I'm so glad that my wife it is my business partner, because I know I am not Superman. I know I'm not a genius. I'm going to make mistakes, and now I have an extra pair of eyes of someone who I trust with everything my whole life to also be looking at the same stuff I do. It doesn't make sense for me where like you're really missing out on potential when you outsource or leverage just one person in a relationship to handle everything. Even if one person is better, you could say is better, smarter, whatever it is. It like, this is the person that you chose to spend your life with. Like, you should utilize them just as an extra pair of eyes to double check things, because again, we're human, we make mistakes. So I'm really glad we worked really hard to get to this point, and I have to say it was not easy. It took battles of like leveraging time and trying to get here, and I'm not just talking about her. I'm talking about myself too. Like, especially when the finances weren't good. That's like hard. It's like, hey, or like if maybe you spend a little bit too much money. This is like in the early days where we're trying to build wealth, and I spent something and I'm like, oh crap, if we review our finances, we're gonna have to go over this thing I bought. I probably shouldn't have bought it. I didn't, it's like that was not the best financial move. But again, that transparency helps, and it's just something I really encourage to get to in your relationship if you can. At least make the effort. It's really helped me out, and helped our we're worth way more than we ever thought we would be, and I do not take credit for that. It's definitely having a partnership with my wife.
I love that answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess I would describe myself as I'm hardcore married. Like, I'm in it and it's all ours. And it's like, that's the way I look at it. Like when my wife and I got together, neither one of us had anything. And so we built it all together. It's human capital too. Like when we got together, she finished school, she became a clinical psychologist. She has earning potential at various times in our lives. She's been making more. She's been making less. I mean, to me, I could care less. Like, from my point of view, if I'm bringing in 1% of the money and she's bringing in 99% or the reverse, it's 100% ours together. And all decisions are made jointly, and we look at it as a household unit, and we're building it together. So I'd say, is that hardcore married? I should trademark that. But that's the way I see it. And we actually have a chapter in our book that says, go to college, get married, buy a house or not. And we debate about the house thing. But the research that I've done on beliefs around money, married people have healthier money beliefs. And one of the reasons for that is if you're just operating with money by yourself, like I was, I had a scarcity mindset. Like when my wife and I started dating, she's like, oh man, maybe you should get a couch. And I was so like terrified about this woman who wanted to spend my money on a couch. It's like, I literally had lawn chairs and I'm like, these are fine. Like, what are you doing? But in retrospect, it's like, that's a good idea to buy a couch. I got to be honest, they're very comfortable. And so she's really brought a more balanced view of money for me. And I've done the same for her. And therein lies the opportunity. And I'll say this too. I feel like I'm peddling marriage. We have a side hustle where we make money when people get married. We don't. But like the average married person between the ages of 25 and 35 has 7x or 8x the net worth on the female side and 3x on the male side. So it's like
Really? I
three
didn't know
times
that.
the amount of money. Yeah, and I think it's partially because you're sharing expenses. You have double income quite often, and you have somebody who's like, hey, what's this purchase for? Like that. Somebody, an accountability partner that you're moving forward on the same in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I've been married 5 years now. We're having our first kid in 2 months. And I tell her all the time, like,
Congrats.
the success has gone way up since being married. Like, there's a sense of accountability and like shared purpose and long-term thinking and all those sort of things. Like having a kid together, you start to get prepared financially in ways that being a single guy out of college, it's like, it's very easy to just keep going without the couch and whatever. I eat healthier now. I make sure that I don't skip meals and stuff like that. Like it was easier being single to just like kind of coast, and now there's a sense of like stepping into like adulthood and being a provider and also like a partner. I think it's a powerful thing. I'm very pro marriage as well.
That's awesome. I'm curious, actually, from each of you, and this is something I actually don't know of Dr. Brad. When it comes to like expenses, for example, like how do you work out, I would say, bigger ticket expenses? And then I can answer at the end. Just curious, like your take. So, for example, you want to buy something, or your wife wants to buy something. Do you have a threshold of like, hey, if it's under this, doesn't matter, or is it every expense, or does it matter at all? I'm curious how you guys collaborate with your wives.
Yeah, so I have an S corp, and that kind of functions as something in between my business partnership and my individual. And so like, I think that's a place that I invest in, like growing my podcast, for example, or for going to a seminar or workshop. I think the biggest things I buy are like personal development things. I'm in a really cool leadership course right now called Atlas Project, and it's 90 days and it's super intense. And we have like world-class trainers and coaches and accountability and going after like the biggest goals in my life I've ever gone for. And it was $4K. That was like a no-brainer investment for me. But that was really big in my wife's eyes that I'm spending $4K, right? And so, I would say once it's around that mark, like 4 or 5K, I think we get to have a conversation about like that investment I'm making. I think it's the intention for me. It's like, is it an investment into who I am and what I'm building in the future? And like, is it going to yield more because of it? Or is it like a knickknack or commodity or something that like Dr. Brad was kind of dissing on earlier? For me, I rarely ever go and just like buy random stuff. Like I'm the person, whenever we have to go shopping, I like don't want anything. Like all this stuff just seems annoying to like own and have to deal with and store. And like even clothes is like, I just wait for my mom to get me pants because she sees like my pants are stained and I should have new pants. Like I don't really value that. I make sure I have a good suit, and that's the extent of my spending on that. So I would say that. And my wife is more about giving. I see that she wants to do large giving sometimes. She's from a village in Thailand. And so there's a lot of people pressing on her now that she's an American citizen married to an entrepreneur that's, building net worth and like, I guess at this stage it's probably like 40, 50K a month of net worth increase. That's not like spendable cash, but like I'm building equity in real estate properties. And they see these things and they're like, can you, give $500 a month to this thing? Can you give $5,000 here? And we get to talk about like whether that's out of obligation, because she's from that Asian household where there's a sense of obligation to parents, versus like, is this part of like a thing that she wants to create impact in the world? And lots of times it is a sense of that learned helplessness thing. People reaching out because someone's alcoholic and they need to be given 5K. Well, that's not the solution to their alcoholism. So we're not giving to that. But, your mom is still working the rice fields if she's 64 years old. Yeah, we can give her 300 a month and make sure that she's retired. She can live off of that in the village of Thailand just fine. So we made that commitment recently to retire her parents. And that felt really, really impactful. And for me, that was like $300 from me and like 200 from her, and we've got it. That's kind of how I think about it, I guess.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, when we were much more broke, my wife and I had a, hey, we're gonna consult with each other for an expense over $100, and by the way, I hadn't really thought about it in a while, so we still have that anchor point, but it's definitely not that, and it's definitely more detailed than that. It's like the other day, she's like, oh my God, what's this $4,000 on a trademark? What are you doing? So every now and then she'll catch me with something like that on the business side. And I'm like, well, of course, I need the trademark. She's like, what are you going to do with that? I said, I don't know. And so she challenges me on some dumb business decisions along the way too. But I think I think that's probably still around. Like if I'm going to go spend $500 on something, I mean, I'd run it by her for sure. But if it's like stuff for the kids or the house, the way that I sort of let go of all of it is like, I'm going to pay myself first. So this is the amount of money going here and there for our major financial goals. And I'll just tell you, like the rest of the money, I don't really care. I could care less. I mean, it'll go where in service of our children, our business, whatever. But that's one of the ways that I let go of my anxiety around money is like, I have this like anxiety, like, oh no, I don't want to be poor again, which we had a couples therapist who's like, dude, you're not going to be poor again. Like, well, what are you doing? And I had to sort of
still have that anxiety.
Like, oh, I guess you're right. Yeah. I still, well, not as much as I did after being confronted by the therapist. And the therapist, and this was years ago, but the therapist is like, he's like, hey, look, Brad, your financial stress is going to kill you. And then I was like, wow. So literally this was the way my mind worked. Well, wow, if it kills me, then I'm going to lose out on 25 more years of making money and investing money. So it's in my financial best interest to not die early because of financial stress. But literally that sort of intervention really helped me a lot because I was like, damn, you're right, because I didn't know that motor was so deep inside of there. And so that just being conscious of that really helped me a lot, let go of some of that daily anxiety. And as long as I know, hey, look, here's our target goals here and there, whatever, as long as that's being taken care of, I don't really monitor the day-to-day where it goes.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I feel like my wife and I, we used to have a threshold, especially when we were like in our trying to make it era. And now that we have financial freedom, we kind of have like, as long as we max out this is like the minimum investments that we're doing. As long as we both have 401ks from one of our businesses and we have 100% employer match. And then we invest $1,000 a day essentially into the stock market. And then we also do real estate stuff, but that's like the automatic stuff. All the other stuff has to be conscious investments. And I feel like we've had like the mindset is like, as long as we can always have that as the default, any expenditures after that, like there's not really a need for discussion unless it's like really sizable. And again, that's all relative. So like, I just spent $40,000 last month on a pickleball court at my house.
Wow.
Actually, Tanner, I told you this so you could come over next time you're in Austin.
That's
and play.
quite a draw to get me out to your house. Yeah, that's a great one.
But like so that's a decision that it's not normal. It's 40,000, and also it like affects our house. It's gonna look different. So of course that's a decision that I didn't do it out of obligation. I wanted to talk to my wife about it. But I never have the expectation like Ashley could walk in my door and say if she wanted to buy whatever it is, and I know it would never be something that would put us in a deficit. My answer is always gonna be yes. And I think she knows that, and I know that. I'm never gonna be like, are you sure? Like or like why? Like to me it's like, this is, as long as we're doing that automatic default, like to me that is like anything else is gravy beyond that. So it's like the answer is always yes. And so like when I told her about the pickleball court, because like she honestly doesn't really play. So again, this court is like, is she going to use it? Maybe. Am I going to use it 100%? So it's not a decision for us. So when I brought it to her, I had no fear down in my mind. She'd be like, no. It was more of like, her thing was like, well, what are the colors and what are we gonna do? Like she was like, again, I brought it to, and she helped me pick the location and stuff. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I have to come up with this big sales pitch to try to convince her, because we know we got our bases covered. We have the automatic investments happening.
Yeah, it could be a great cash flow machine for you too if you wanted to turn into a 24/7 pickleball. Yeah, that's cool, man. I love that. Well, I wanted to be conscious of time. I know that we booked this until 8 and we're like already about 15 minutes past. Is there anything more that you guys feel is important to echo or mention about this mindset that you guys are touring the country and devoting a lot of this era of your life to?
I think we covered it all. I think we definitely do have a closing opportunity for anyone that listens. That will be for your audience. Actually, to clarify this, so if we create like a custom URL, would you want it to, could we do like POP? So startthinkingrich.com/POP.
Yeah, that's our little nickname, Pop.
Cool. Okay.
Pop Podcast, People of Purpose. Yeah.
Perfect. Sweet.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and
say it?
Go ahead and intro it. Yeah, go ahead and intro
Okay.
it. Tanner might go chip choo.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, Tanner, I want to say thank you so much for having us. It's been a blast. I look forward to meeting you next time you're in Austin. We can play some pickleball. Our book comes out super soon. It might be out by the time you're listening. You can definitely get it where all books are available. It's called Start Thinking Rich, or as a special place, and this is a way of saying thank you to you and all your listeners. You can go to startthinkingrich.com/pop, POP, and we actually have some extra bonuses and resources to help you start thinking rich as fast as possible.
Sweet. I'm excited to check that out. Cool. Yeah, I mean, thank you guys so much for being here. This was really fun conversation. It's not every day that you get to talk to two guys that are very aligned with each other and with me, and like there's a sense of fellowship and camaraderie amongst I really appreciate that, like, we're all still working very hard and we could also like turn it off and be fine. Like there's a sense of mission and duty, and that's why I had you on the show. There's a sense of like purpose. It's not you're not doing this to like run up the score and like brag about your wealth or whatever. There's a sense of like I'm on a mission to like get rid of poverty mindset and to free people up into abundance and joy and possibility, and it's out of desire, and that really reflected in today's interview. I was really grateful to share that, and these things always stick with me for days and days and days afterwards. It's like a little touch of like magic abundance dust that you guys brought today. I'm sure the people listening are feeling the same. Appreciate that.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.